Again, I want to thank you for joining our webinar series. This one's titled Best Practices for Selecting a Background Screening Company, or Are You Using the Right Background Screening Company? Hopefully this means that all of you are conducting background checks, which is great. Especially these days, you want to make sure that you are doing those background checks on those individuals. And we talk about the FCRA and the crucial sections of the FCRA. We talk about background screening policies and how your policy should look. We talk about certain traits that you should look at based on your applicant's application and compliant applications. Anyway, what I'm getting to is now we're finally going to get into kind of screening the screeners. What you should look for when you are doing backgrounds with a vendor, exploring different vendors, and best practices that they should be following. So let's go ahead and get started. My name is Cody Farzad, and I'm the Director of Operations for Employers Choice Online, which is a division of Diversified Risk Management. I've been in this position for about a year and a half now. I have about 4 years in total with the company. Kind of my responsibilities are educating businesses, employers on state and federal laws regarding background checks, also best practices regarding our industry. I'd like to consider myself an expert on the Fair Credit Reporting Act, and that's the federal law that governs what background screening companies can and can't do, as well as state guidelines that regulate consumer reporting agencies. Now keep in mind, all employers should be following the FCRA, but they also should be aware of their own state laws, because there are a few states out there that kind of have their mini FCRA and laws that background screening companies doing business either in that state or have employers in that state must abide by. Here's our disclaimer. So again, any of the information that we provide is for informational purposes only. Please consult with your employment law attorney or legal counsel if you have any further questions. Topics we'll be going over today is screening vendor compliant with federal and state law. So making sure your vendor is complying and abiding by the FCRA and any state-specific laws pertaining to background checks. Compliant disclosure forms, releases, and notices. It's the applicant releases, notices that they should be receiving, as well as notices that you, the employer, should be receiving from the vendor, the background screening vendor. Talk about secure software for ordering, retrieving, and storing reports. Again, an online platform, how you're making your orders, how you're receiving your final reports. We'll talk about payroll service providers like ADP and Paychex. License to retrieve public records. This basically goes into court researchers that your background screening vendor is utilizing to do county level record searches. Talk about legally compliant results on a background check. Affiliation with trade organizations. So industry-specific trade organizations, and we'll get into those. Disclaimer regarding database searches. These are instant criminal database searches. There should be specific disclosures and notices to the employer on the background check. We'll also talk about full knowledge of the adverse and pre-adverse action. And then we'll go into client references, Better Business Bureau, and value-added services. And this is kind of a value-added service, our webinar series that we offer to our clients. And again, for those of you that joined us late, if you have any questions, go ahead and type them either in the chat box in the upper right-hand corner of the GoToMeeting, or you could go ahead and email me, or write them down and just bring them up at the end of the presentation. We should have about 15-20 minutes to discuss any kind of questions you will have. I know we got started a little late, so let's go ahead and get started. First, background screening vendor compliance with federal and state law. Your background vendor should be an expert, should have full knowledge, should be able to speak to the FCRA, the Fair Credit Reporting Act. It is a very, very lengthy law. It's about 60 pages, but there are certain sections in there that your vendor should highlight, and we have done webinars in the past digging deep into the FCRA, and we did a series on crucial sections that employers should know about the FCRA, so that's up on our website if you want to take a look at that. But your vendor should really have full knowledge of the Fair Credit Reporting Act, the different sections, and for instance, the permissible purpose for doing background checks, the applicant dispute process, disclosure and authorization forms, possible maximum accuracy, things like that. So your background screening vendor really should know the FCRA in and out. Should have full knowledge of all 50 state background laws. Again, there are a few states out there, California, New York, Washington, that have their own specific laws governing background checks. So your background screening vendor, and there is a guide out there that's updated, I believe, every year with new legislation coming out in each state. So they should have a grasp or pulse on each state's background screening laws. They should have, obviously, a reporting period. What's the reporting period that they should be reporting criminal convictions? Again, the FCRA states 7 years from the disposition date and or release from prison. There are some states that do offer a reporting period going past 7 years if they're going to be making a certain dollar amount each year. So your background screening company really should only be giving you criminal convictions that are within the reporting period. Permissible purpose. They should be stating what your permissible purpose is for running background checks. Obviously, it would be for employment purposes. So it should be stated on any kind of service agreement notices that the employer's permissible purpose to run background checks is for employment purposes only. They should have an applicant disclosure form. And we'll discuss more what that form should look like, but that's the release form that the applicants complete authorizing the employer to run the background check through the vendor. End user notices. The background screening vendor should identify who the end user is and have specific notices and a signed service agreement with that end user. They should also identify sensitive searches. These are kind of gray area type searches where currently there's law out. For instance, trying to ban credit reports altogether. The EEOC is getting a lot of claims of discrimination from minorities because they are claiming they're being discriminated against because of their credit reports. Workers' compensation. It's a very, very sensitive search in that it must be done after the employee has been offered employment. You cannot make a decision solely on a workers' comp claim, and there are further signed releases that the applicant must give in order to run a workers' compensation search. So we'll talk about those sensitive searches. All right, compliant disclosure forms, releases, and notices. End user notice. Basically, whoever is going to be making the employment decision, whoever is going to be the end user of the report, is who the background screening vendor should have a service agreement with. So there are some people that, for instance, are staffing companies or HR consultants where they'll be facilitating the background, they'll be ordering the background, but they'll just be handing it over to the company so that they can make the employment decision. The background screening vendor must identify who the end user of the reports are going to be and have a signed service agreement with them. A user compliance certificate. This is going to be again, a notice or a certificate per person that's going to be requesting background checks. So this isn't going to be for the actual employer. These are going to be for the HR generalist, the payroll person, the VP, whoever is the one that's ordering reports, putting in the applicant's sensitive information, retrieving the results. They should be completing what's called a user compliance certificate or a user compliance notice. And each time a new user is added to the account, that user should be complying a certificate. And essentially it's just stating that you're going to be using the background screening vendor and its platform for employment purposes only. You're not just going to go ahead and start running background checks on your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your friend or someone you don't like within the company. So you must have a user compliance certificate completed and given to the background screening vendor. Applicant release and disclosure form. We touch on this almost every single webinar that we do, is a compliant, standalone, boilerplate form, disclosure and authorization form. This is the form that states any and all searches a background screening company can do on a applicant for employment purposes. Credit, criminal, driving, reference checks, education, employment verification, drug testing. All of those searches should be encompassed in a one-page, standalone, boilerplate form, which should be a disclosure and authorization form that the applicant completes. They put their name, date of birth, social, address, If they live in specific states that they're allowed to get a copy of their report, there should be a box where they could check receiving a report. For instance, California, Minnesota, Oklahoma, and Washington, as well as New York, those applicants are all able to receive a copy of the report with or without being hired. So if they have their right to check that box and get a copy of their report, that should appear on the disclosure form. Applicant notices. Applicants must receive, every applicant must receive, in all 50 states, FCRA Summary of Rights, stating their rights under the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Rule of thumb, they give you the disclosure form, you give them a copy of the FCRA Summary of Rights. If they are a California applicant, they receive the California Statement of Consumer Rights, as well as a document called Notice Regarding Background Investigation. So essentially there are 3 handouts that must be given to California applicants. There are other state-specific handouts. For instance, in New York, you must give them what is called an Article 23A. It's a law that came out 2 years ago in New York where any criminal convictions that an employer receives, they must look at it to see if it's going to be directly reflected in the job the applicant's having. So the applicant has the right to know the law, in that just because they were convicted of a criminal crime doesn't mean that they would essentially be disqualified for employment. And like I had mentioned, specific searches have further release forms. Workers' compensation in states where it is available. Workers' comps are not available in each state. So in states that are available, for instance, in Idaho, Idaho requires an additional signed release to run just a workers' compensation claim. Motor vehicle reports. State of Alaska asks for an additional release form to pull motor vehicle reports. So why I'm telling you this is you want to make sure your background screening vendor is making you aware of these specific disclosure releases and notices. And for our clients, all of our compliance forms are located right on our platform. So when they log into the platform to request a background, they're able to view all of our notices, releases. So if they lose any, misplace them, they could print them right off of our website. Secure software for ordering, retrieving, and archiving reports. So we do have an online software platform that we utilize, that our clients use to log in and put in their applicant sensitive information and click on the searches they want us to do. It's a very, very user-friendly system, and it's kind of the way all background screening companies should be collecting information to do a background check. So what you want to do first is review the data and security policy. It should be right on the website. The vendor should have no problem providing you with a security policy and data protection statement. You want to make sure their website has a current SSL certificate, and the platform, I put here Collaction Center. Essentially, there's 2 ways background screening companies use a online platform. It's either their own proprietary information where they created the platform, they house the hardware either in their location or a off-site data center, or it's also known as, and what we're doing, if you don't want to create that information, you don't want to house the specific hardware, you could do a software as a service. It's SaaS, and basically there are vendors out there that provide the servers, the data center, for background screening companies, and we just utilize their platform as like a web page, and it's just a software as a service. We don't have any hardware at all. Either way, you want to make sure you're reviewing all of their data security and data protection policies. Where is your sensitive background data saved? So is there an off-site data center where all of the social security numbers, date of birth, names you put in is going to? And how are the security measures? Physical and off-site. I was able to go to our vendor's location in Utah and actually visit their data center and see where all of our client-sensitive information is being housed. So you really want to identify where the information is being saved. Is it going to be in your vendor's location, or is it going to be off-site at a data center? And if so, what security measures have they put in place? Next, how are reports ordered? How are you ordering your reports? Are you logging in and clicking on the searches you want done and inputting the information based off of the release form? Or are you faxing the release to the background screening vendor, and are they inputting the information for you? Now, of course, you like to have full control of the background screening process, but also you want to have an expert opinion. We do offer a service where we will order background checks on behalf of our client. It's one number that we use that's only given to those specific clients, and it's a confidential eFax. It comes right to my email address, a secure confidential eFax, but we are able to do that for our clients. So you want to make sure that however way you're ordering your reports, it's either a secure login or some sort of confidential transmission of the release form. Next, how are final reports transmitted? How are you viewing your final reports? Again, are you logging into a website, a secure login website, and pulling the background check from there, or is the background screening vendor compiling the information, putting into a report for you, and, for instance, emailing it to you? We strongly urge clients to not receive reports via email or fax. There's just information could be comprised. So you want to make sure that you're logging into a specific website and pulling your reports that way. Again, user compliance certificate, making sure each user of the background platform has a certificate stating they'll only use the background screening vendor's platform for employment purposes to run background checks, and ensuring that they get a signed release. We do audit our clients every month. We do a random audit to make sure that our clients are getting those signed releases from the applicants, because again, with our platform, we don't ask to see the release form unless we need it, to verify education or verify employment. So we have notices and have certificates that our clients attesting to that they do get a signed release from each and every applicant they run a background check on. And we reserve the right to do an audit just to make sure that they are getting those releases. Administrative privileges. Our system has a capability of giving certain administrative rights to multiple users. So you could have an administrator on the account who can view all reports ordered from other users. You could have users that could only order reports and not view completed reports. So if you do have multiple users on your account, ask your vendor if they could have different administrative rights or privileges. Payroll service providers. So this would be your ADP, your Paychex. They're starting to get in the background screening game now. Basically what they're doing is converting their payroll clients to doing background checks. Basically, they should really be sticking to their niche with our payroll services. We like friendly competition. That's part of the game. That's the nature of the business. However, they're kind of spreading themselves thin. So they really need to make sure that they're sticking to payroll services and what they do best, which is providing that service to their clients. Lack of experience in the background screening industry. It's a very fluid industry. It's constantly changing. It's growing by leaps and bounds. It has been around for a while. So these payroll service providers really don't have any kind of experience in the background screening business with regards to case law, with regards to certain industries that require certain types of searches to be done. So that's something that you want to look for if you are using your payroll service provider to do your background checks as well. Some of them have lengthy contracts. They get the client into a 3 or 4 year contract with a background screening vendor, and with whether they like or don't like the service, they're kind of stuck in a long contract. And for instance, at Employer's Choice, we don't require any contracts or monthly fees or anything like that. So be cautious of contracts that your payroll service provider is asking you to get into with their preferred background screening vendor. And that's the next bullet point, is they always have their own preferred vendor, and you really don't have the option of vetting or screening your potential background screening vendor. They say, since you do payroll services with us, we would like to introduce ABC Company as our background screening preferred vendor. And you don't have a lot of options there. Customer service piece is sacrificed. A lot of clients that I have signed up recently that have had previously payroll preferred vendors as their background screening provider basically said that they were lost in the shuffle, that they get passed on from account rep to account rep, maybe due to their size, maybe due to their needs. So with these bigger payroll companies, they are bringing on larger vendors where they are big players in the game. However, the customer service piece is lacking. And also you want to be aware of option packages. Option packages are great for different types of positions you're hiring for. Also, make sure that you are able to do a la carte pricing or one-offs where, I have a package that has driving, education, and criminal. However, I'd like to add sometimes a drug test or a TB test. So just making sure you have the flexibility to add specific searches. License to pull public records. We are a division of Diversified Risk Management, which is a licensed private investigator in the state of California. Most states do require court researchers. Now, these are the researchers that the background screening vendor is using to pull county criminal records, because, of course, the only way you're going to get a true criminal background check is doing county-level criminal searches. There are states out there, for instance, New Jersey, will actually prosecute court researchers that are not licensed in the state of New Jersey to pull criminal records or public records. So you really want to make sure that your background screening vendor is utilizing researchers that are licensed in specific states that require them to be licensed to pull public records. Enforcement versus required. There are some states that strongly enforce this law, and there are some states that require it but really won't come down on anyone violating it. So all in all, just make sure that you are using a vendor that has researchers licensed to pull public records. Investigative consumer report. Know the difference between a regular credit consumer report or a consumer credit report and an investigative consumer report. Basically, investigative would just mean like a reference verification. It's more investigation. That's a whole other topic that we could get into. Next bullet point is general liability and errors and omission insurance. Make sure that your vendor does have insurance in the event they report a case that shouldn't be reported, a lawsuit then happens. So make sure they have general liability insurance, and you have the right to ask to view that. Legally compliant results. These are results you're getting on your background check, the final report. Make sure that criminal cases that they have been convicted for have occurred within the last 7 years. Again, the FCRA states only convictions, so if they were found guilty or pled no contest within the last 7 years are reportable. The specific section of the FCRA is 606, subsection D, number 3. So you want to make sure that you're getting only convictions, not dismissed cases, not expunged cases, not sealed cases, not cases where they were found not guilty, not arrest records, but you are getting convictions that have occurred within the last 7 years. Also with credit reports, ensuring that any bankruptcies that are reported are no more than 10 years from the file date. So when you do get your credit report, and the credit bureaus really should be the ones abiding by this and only providing bankruptcies occurring within the last 10 years on their credit reports. That's why they are considered employment or pre-employment credit reports, is that they are soft inquiries, so they don't have any bearing on their FICO score, but more importantly, it should only be reporting public records like bankruptcies that have occurred within the last 10 years. Most importantly, if your background screening company is doing business out of the state of California, they must have this specific notice on the first page of the report. California Civil Code Law states, 12-point bold font, it says it right in the law, that the report does not guarantee the accuracy or the truthfulness of the information as to the subject of the investigation, that it is accurately copied from public records and information generated as a result of identity theft, including evidence of criminal activity, may be inaccurately associated with the consumer who is the subject of the report. This is just based on identity theft. It could be that this person's identity has been stolen, somebody else had been using that. You want to make sure that this notice appears on your final reports that you're getting, and it also should be in Spanish as well, especially if the background screening company is located in the state of California. Applicant-sensitive information is truncated. You want to make sure that any social security numbers, date of birth that you're seeing on the background report is truncated. They are not just putting that information out there. That information should only be on the release form that the applicant completes. And we need that information in order to complete the background check. Outside of that, any information you get on a background report should be truncated. Okay. Now, affiliation with trade organizations. Kind of the big trade organization with background screening companies is NAPBS, the National Association of Professional Background Screeners. We've been a member since 2004. I have gone to a few of their annual and mid-year conferences. Other trade organization is ASIS, and that's for security professionals, or SHRM for HR professionals, PIRA. These are certain trade organizations that promote kind of best practices, like-minded companies coming together for the betterment of the industry. This is very good credibility for companies. Kind of what you get with these trade organizations are legal updates. They're constantly updating us on certain laws that have been changing, cases that are being brought within the Supreme Court, kind of how our industry is going. They also, too, do educational webinars like what we're doing right now. Very, very informative webinars. I've sat in on a few, and it's a great wealth of information they give. NAPBS has an accreditation program, so companies that are members can go through an accreditation program, basically testing their knowledge in the industry, abiding by certain guidelines, and they get accredited, and it's a nice logo they can put on their website. It's like I said, it brings credibility. Again, promotes best practice standards. Only recognize organizations specific to background. So there are thousands of trade organizations specific to certain industries. You may want to identify ones that are with background screening companies and see if your background screening vendor is associated with them. Another one that we're a member of, as well as Concerned CRAs, Consumer Reporting Agencies. Basically, their mission is to ensure companies that are doing database searches are putting notices, making their clients aware of the limitations of the nationwide database search, as well as any information being sent offshore. So for international background checks, are companies sending client-sensitive information outside of the U.S.? If it is it secure? Where is it being sent? Things like that. Disclaimer regarding database searches. Again, something that we talk about almost in every single webinar is database searches, specifically criminal database searches. A lot of consumers, a lot of prospects, inquiries, even our own clients sometimes feel they could just do a nationwide criminal database search and they are doing their all in seeing if someone has a criminal background, and that's not the case. The FCRA recognizes instant criminal databases as not up to date, and that it doesn't cover every single county, so not every single county contributes their cases. And more importantly, it's not updated in real time. So even if you do have a county that contributes a case to the nationwide index, sometimes takes up to 2 to 3 months to get it uploaded in these database searches. So your background screening vendor should educate you on that. Again, it's because clients don't want to do every single county background level search. They want to do a nationwide search, and it's a good cursory search. But there should be a disclaimer stating that the database search doesn't cover every single county, is not updated in real time, and more importantly, it's a name match only. So if you have a very common name and you do a nationwide database search, you're going to get a lot of hits. So those notices should appear on any database search that you are running on in your report. Ask your vendor if there are any alternatives. Can you give a specific price on multi-counties if I'm going to be searching multi-counties? How do I utilize the Social Security trace to really identify counties that the applicant has lived in? And more importantly, any hits found in a nationwide database search must be researched at the county of record. You're just not getting the whole case. You're not getting sentencing information. Like I said, it's just kind of a cursory, a broad search to see if there's anything out there. If there is, you're confident it does belong to your applicant, that background screening vendor must send a researcher to that county of record to pull those case files. Full knowledge of the adverse and pre-adverse action process. This one is big. A lot of companies now are getting in trouble because they are not following the pre-adverse adverse action process. And basically, this is what you'll do if you decide not to hire an applicant based on the background check. So you get a criminal background check within your background screening policy. It would be considered disqualification and you don't want to hire them. That's fine. That's your right. However, your background screening vendor should be explaining the pre-adverse and adverse action process. It's a two-part process. They should be providing with you two of the letters. The pre-adverse action letter, and they should be given to you both in English and in Spanish. Basically, the pre-adverse action letter states that background check was done on you. Some information has been reported. You have the right to contact the background screening company. Here is their information. Here is their phone number. And a copy of the background report. Then gives the applicant the opportunity to contact the background screening vendor, talk about the information. Again, we only report public records. I would say in 90% of cases, the applicants don't contact us at all, but it is their right. There are some background screening companies out there that have an adjudication process or kind of a pass-fail where the client will give a certain matrix or parameters to the background screening vendor stating, okay, if this comes up and this comes up, they're failed. The background check's no good. We don't want to hire them. If this comes up, that's fine. So kind of a pass or fail. Background screening vendors really shouldn't be the ones making that decision. Again, we're just reporting public record information to employers, to our clients. They are the ones that should be making the employment decision. Now, we have no problem going through the whole background check, answering any questions that they may have. I understand credit reports can be pretty complex. I understand kind of reading sentencing information on a felony case if maybe the charges were reduced to a misdemeanor. But really, the employer, the client of the background screening vendor, should be the one making the employment decision, not the background screening company. The section in the FCRA 611 is the pre-adverse adverse action process. Make sure the background screening vendor and the client is complying with the applicant dispute process. Again, that's disputing any of the information. And in the event where the applicant has provided enough evidence, documentation, that a reinvestigation must be made, the background screening vendor must let the client know that a reinvestigation is going to be done within this time frame, no extra cost, this is why. And a letter should be given to the client and to the applicant. We always let our clients know if an applicant contacts us and what the outcome was of the conversation. So again, it's the pre-adverse adverse action process, and they should be providing you with both letters in English and in Spanish in a Word doc, because you are going to have to obviously change it to put your company name. Client testimonials. Just making sure that your background screening vendor kind of has a testimonial page, a place where clients have commented on the service that they were provided. We encourage you to ask for client references. We have no problem giving references to potential clients or prospects that want to reach out to our clients to see how the service was, how the product is. So there should be no problem at all. Usually ask for 3 references, kind of maybe specific to your industry. So if you are in the IT industry, asking for references with specific IT companies that the vendor has done background checks for. A Better Business Bureau membership. We belong to the Better Business Bureau. It's a good idea to always look up any vendor you're going to use on the Better Business Bureau, see what their grade is, see if there's been any kind of negative action taken, maybe any comments. So you really want to make sure you're seeing if your vendor, background screening vendor, any vendor you use is on the Better Business Bureau, and if they have a DUNS number. And a DUNS number, again, is kind of like the business credit report. You get a credit report on the business, the background screening vendor. and a federal tax ID number and things like that. So it's very important, to look at those testimonials, but more importantly, get those references and talk to them and ask them how they like the service, how they like the reports, is the customer service good, things like that. And that's actually the end of the webinar. So we got about 10 minutes left for anyone who is remaining that wants to ask any questions. I'll go ahead and open it up. Does anybody have any questions at all?
Hey, Cody.
Yes.
Cody, Rich Miller in Dearborn, Michigan.
How are you, Rich?
I'm well, and you?
I'm good. What's going on?
Hey, Dan, Deputy Chief, and we want to know, is there a cost on that software for ordering and retrieving and storing reports?
No, it's not. For our clients, we absorb the cost. It's just an easier way for clients to request background checks. But there are some companies that may charge a implementation fee or a technology fee to kind of maintain the platform. But we don't charge a setup fee or anything like that to use the platform.
What do we have to do to get it installed?
Well, it's what it is it's the interface that you use once you go onto our website. So when you go onto our website, you click login, you put in the information. That's the online ordering system.
Okay, I'm good with that.
Okay.
And then what do I do to give Dan, the Deputy Chief, full rights like I have?
He would just need to complete a user compliance certificate. Once he completes the certificate, we receive it. We put it in your account and email him directly his own login information. And then if he needs to have the same administrative rights as yourself, you could both be administrators on the account. So I'll go ahead and I'll reach out to you after the call, get his information, and then send him that compliance certificate.
Okay, that's great. That's all we have.
Okay. Anyone else? And if anything comes up later, please email me. We're here, for our clients, or if you're not a client, that's not a problem at all. We pride ourselves in educating and equipping clients and consumers with the right information. And this is a value-added service. It is complimentary, so please reach out to me if you guys have any questions at all. And I do appreciate you attending this webinar. I know it's kind of a weird time and getting into the summer season, so thank you guys very much. Again, yes?
This is Patty. I just wanted to ask you, I see there's a couple of questions on your phone callers list here. Are you going to answer those?
Yeah, let me pull those up 1 second. Yes, let me pull those up 1 second. Okay, great. Is there a required pre-adverse action or adverse action notification for failed drug tests? Yeah. Yes, a drug test is considered a background screening report. Especially, if you're getting the drug test through a background screening vendor, so not if you're sending the person to the lab and the lab's giving you the results directly, that's not a background screening report or a consumer credit report. But if you're going through a background screening vendor and they report the positive drug test, then you must provide the pre-adverse and adverse action letters. That's a very, very good question. Can we have a copy of this PowerPoint emailed to us? Sure. Have no problem. Reach out to me. Email me, and I could send you the PowerPoint. Again, we archive all of our webinars on our website, so you could view it from there as well. But I'll have no problem emailing you the PowerPoint from today's webinar. Just go ahead and send me a quick note, and I'll send it to you. But I believe those are the only two questions we had. So, anyone else?
Thanks, Cody.
All right. Well, I appreciate you guys taking the time out. Reach out to me if you need anything else, and look for further webinars that we're going to be doing in the year. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.